Alright, hi everyone. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos on how to do sound design in a virtual synthesizer. I'm going to be using Vital for this series, which is a free synth. That's one of the reasons I'm using it, because it's so accessible. The other one is just that the GUI of Vital makes it really easy to understand what's happening in the synth, especially for someone who's coming to some of these concepts for the first time. The visual feedback is just really good. And then once you've learned a lot of these concepts in Vital, they're quite easy to transfer across to other software synths or even hardware synthesizers. So for this video, we're just going to be covering waveforms and the oscillator. What waveforms are, and yeah, just a little bit of stuff about them. So our oscillator is this section of the synth here, and that is basically where a sound wave is going to get produced. If we go into here, we can see we can choose from some different types of waveforms. So these are just our basic analog waveforms. So we've got a sine wave, we can go through to a saw wave or a square. We have some other options there too. So Vital also has up to 3 oscillators, and we also have a sample player here that can just play back audio samples. Alright, so a little bit about waveforms. What are they? So this diagram here is essentially a visual representation of how the air pressure is going to be affected by the sound wave produced by the oscillator. So you can see here the air pressure is going to increase gradually and decrease gradually. So that's typical of a sine wave. Now the unique thing about a sine wave is that it only happens on one frequency. So if I play a note, this graph here shows us the frequency. And you can see we just have this one spike here, so it's just happening on that one frequency. And a sine wave is the only waveform like that. So if I was to go to a saw wave now, you can see I've got all these high frequencies coming in. So I've still got that fundamental frequency at the bottom, but then I have all these high frequencies above it. And all those high frequencies, in the case of a saw wave, are multiples of the fundamental. So just hypothetically, if my first frequency there was resonating at 100 times per second, so 100 hertz, all those overtones, so those additional frequencies, would be 200, 300, 400, 500, etc. One implication of that, which kind of blew my mind, is that really all we have there is just different sine waves all stacked on top of each other, and they end up producing this sawtooth wave shape. Yeah, I found that kind of mind-blowing, because for quite a long time, I guess, I just sort of, without really ever looking into it, I just believed that like a waveform like this would just also occur on one frequency, but just with a different sort of effect on the air pressure over time. What I didn't realize is that in order for that sort of pressure change to occur like in that way, it requires all those other frequencies to be there. So we can only create other wave shapes other than a sine wave by adding more frequencies. So the implication of that is that all sounds really are just sine waves at different amplitudes. So we're just going to look at one more waveform here. So this is the square wave, and this also has a lot of higher frequencies or overtones. So the difference between a square and a saw is that rather than having every multiple of the fundamental, the square has every other one. So if your fundamental was 100 hertz, then your overtones would be 300, 500, 700, etc. So you can hear the square has a bit of a hollower sound than a saw wave, which is a bit richer and brighter. And the sine wave is really mellow. Right, so I'll just show you a couple of other functions that we have in the oscillator section here before we wrap this one up. So I've got volume. So that's the volume just of that oscillator. I've got pan, left and right. And I have 2 tuning options here, so I can move this up and down by semitones, Let's go to a sine wave just to make it a bit less harsh. I can go to 48 here, I think. And minus 48 as well. And then I also have a fine tuning option here, which is plus or minus 100 cents. So 100 cents is one semitone, so I'm tuning in hundredths of a semitone here, which can also be quite useful as well. All right, so that pretty much wraps up this part of the video series. So that's the oscillator and vital and the waveforms that we're going to be using. In the next video, we'll be looking at how to use the filter. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you in the next one.